All right, everyone. Let's start here. Everyone pay attention to me because I'm standing in front of you. All right, so thank you all for being here this evening, even though you had no choice. What we're going to do first is a quick semester review from last semester, where you thought we did well, what you thought we could do better, not just here in Senate leadership and as individuals, but on the whole, things you like, things you didn't like, what you'd like to see going forward, all that. So Monty's going to type, raise your hands, otherwise, so go ahead. What do you think we did well? We'll start with that. Nothing.
I think Senate has done, or Senate leadership, first of all, has existed this year, but has also done a much better job at engaging and reaching out to people than in previous years. So I hope that, first of all, grows and gets better.
Okay. Any other good things?
Filling all the positions. Well, I said you guys have been really transparent.
Transparency.
Why do you laugh?
That's not a good stuff.
No, we were talking about transparency earlier. I was doing something in front of that window, and Caleb made a comment about transparency, so it just made me laugh.
Go ahead, Caleb.
Just in general, I think there's been a lot more engagement, both Senate leadership, as Damon said, and also from the body itself. So I think that's great. We're definitely moving in the right direction.
We definitely have better outreach this year.
Okay. Anything else? Hi. Go ahead.
I think our image has changed to become more welcoming to outsiders.
Anything else? Alright, now we'll move on. Now we'll move on to things to improve. Improvements? Don't be shy. I'll move against you, Caleb.
I just like to reiterate, the fact that we, in the Senate, we debate content, not character. And we had one or two incidents. And I think that just with the work, we could get rid of those, and I think that would be better.
Okay.
Bringing legislation to other senators before we actually have a Senate meeting.
I'd say bringing legislation through relevant committees too.
Talking about that later. Yeah.
I think building off that theme is a lot of what we did last year. There was a flurry of legislation. That's because people, knew how to write it. I think having, a discussion on, first of all, the purpose of legislation, but also how to do it and how to organize that.
Anyone else? Ruth, go ahead.
Gossip in the USG office, I think we as senators can set the standard, so we shouldn't tolerate that this semester.
Anyone else? Okay, that's pretty good, guys. Thank you for the feedback. We just wanted to see what we, Senate leadership and as a Senate body as a whole, are doing right, wrong, change. Going forward, we want to make the best Senate possible. So next, you can mark next. So I told many of you at the end of the fall semester that me and Senate leadership were going to be designing a new, more standardized legislative structure. Because in the past, we've given a lot of room for senators to bring legislation to us however they wanted to, left all the responsibility on the senators to take legislation to committees, to talk to other senators about it. And what we felt that led to, specifically in the fall semester, to no fault of anyone's, was legislation being a bit rushed, not being discussed as much as it should have been, incomplete legislation coming to the floor as a whole, and causing Senate meetings to be bogged down and us debating, frankly, semantics on periods being in the right place and whether certain clauses should be included. And we want to make sure that by the time legislation makes it to Senate, that we're debating the content of the bill itself, or the legislation itself, and whether or not it should pass. So to that end, we're going to be making some changes. Specifically, I am going to be making some changes as to the standards in which I will be expecting of legislation when it is submitted to me. So we've developed this very straightforward three-step system. So the first thing you do is about 1.5 to 2 weeks in advance to the Senate you want to present legislation in. You send your legislation to me at the representative account. I will then get in contact with Josh Rutina, who's our legislative coordinator. He will also have access to this email. He will get in contact directly with you. You'll have a couple of discussions, either in person or electronically, as he'll offer suggestions on what you should change, specifically structurally and grammatically, may make suggestions on content, say maybe this doesn't get to the heart of what you're trying to get at here, making sure that the legislation's in the best possible form before we start moving along in the process. Once that is completed, once you've spoken to the legislative coordinator and you both feel that it's in a good spot, Josh will then send the legislation to the respective committee. That will make a determination which of our 4 standing committees we feel the joint resolution fits best into. If it's something concerning state elections, for example, it'll go to external affairs. We'll make sure it's sent there. That way, behind the scenes administratively, that's all taken care of for you guys. We'll make sure it's sent to the committees, that the committee chairs have it on their agendas. At the next meeting of that committee, it will be considered and hopefully passed. If it is passed, it goes automatically on the Senate agenda and is considered at the next Senate with the committee as a sponsor. Now, there are a couple ways in which this is not a hard set in stone system. It's just a standardization that I've developed. You'll notice that there's going to be no structural changes made to Senate rules. I'm just using my prerogative in editing, being able to compile the agenda to set this. You still have an ability to come directly to me and ask for legislation to be put directly on the agenda, but I'm going to have a high standard in which you need to reach for me to do that. It's going to be something that needs to have been maybe a time-sensitive matter, or you've already talked to a bunch of other senators on, and I need to have discussions with the committee chairs to make sure that they're comfortable with that. And as a final note, just in case that you feel the committee votes something down and I refuse to put it on the agenda, Senate reserves a constitutional right to make edits to its agenda during the meeting through a simple motion, second, and simple majority vote. If you've talked to a bunch of senators, you feel that this shouldn't be on the agenda and the views are not accurately represented by the committee and the speaker, there's still that option. But overwhelmingly, this is the process you should be going through. Yes, it is going to take a little extra time, but frankly, it should. The positions we take, especially in our joint resolutions, are going to be considered by administrators, are going to be considered by state and local officials. We want them to be in pristine condition, and it should take a little extra time for us to get that rolling, to get that presented. Plus, over this 2 weeks, it gives you, as the authors and sponsors, time to talk to more of our senators, time to talk to committee members, committee chairs, presidents, and whoever you need to discuss with, to flesh out the bill more as a whole and make changes that we have been making in Senate beforehand, so that way our Senate meetings take less time and we're debating directly what we need to. That was a lot of information, so I will now answer questions.
Just a quick note on that. Josh mentioned that if you feel like we made the wrong decision by sending it to committee and you'd like to bring it directly to the Senate, I would just ask that you let us know that you intend to do that, because if you want to do that, we will make sure that it is in the folder for the Senate. We don't want to make that process more difficult than it needs to be. If you feel like we made the wrong decision, we'll still put it in the folder and let it go.
Yeah, to go a little further on that, like I said, this statutory authority is more just me exercising power I already had, and I don't really want this to be, I hesitated to do this initially because I didn't want to be too constricting, but it occurred to me by making the process so open-ended, I may not even have given, especially newer senators, a place to start at, and that in and of itself was very daunting. So just to give a general idea of the progression of the system and the way it's supposed to head. this is what it's supposed to look like. We'll make sure this is up somewhere too, so you can look at this after. We're always open to questions. So before I move on, does anyone have any questions about this? Concerns? Go ahead, Derek.
What if the legislation overlaps the scope of 2 or more?
Then we'll talk to, I and the rest of Senate leadership have good relationships with, I like to think, all the committee chairs. We'll talk to the relevant parties and see which one of them would rather take it. And if it is really highly contested, that decision will be up to us in Senate leadership. But I don't think that we'll have a struggle with that. Go ahead.
Say a piece of legislation is considered by the committee that it affects, and the committee declines to sponsor it, i.e. they voted down. What would then happen?
They could then, the authors and sponsors of the bill could then come to me as the speaker and ask me to put it on the agenda, perhaps saying something that they don't feel the committee's vote is accurately representative of Senate, something like that. I personally would probably push you to have a meeting, if you were one of those authors or those sponsors, to have a meeting with the committee chair of whatever committee voted it down, so you can have a discussion on why it was voted down and maybe make changes to it so the next time the legislation goes through, it does pass. But these are all bridges. We'll be very open with this process and be very understanding. We just want something to be in place that exists. So, the question? All right. So I think that's go to the next. So I'm actually lucky for all you veteran senators. Tonight, we're going to do a training for all of the newer senators. You, of course, as a veteran, are welcome to stay if you'd like a refresher. We're also going to do a brainstorming session on pieces of legislation you might want to consider. If you want to stay for that, you're welcome to, but by no means do you have to. Before we go, we do want to make a few announcements, and we'll hear a few other announcements before I let you veterans off. So, first things first, you'll remember back in December, we Fiorella solicited letters of intent for what we at the time called deputy parliamentarian. We had a number of applicants for that position, and once we considered those letters, and we then the end of the semester hit. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. The end of the semester hit, and we obviously didn't have time to consider it before then. So over break, Parliamentarian Contreras and I were talking, and we felt that the scope of the position could be expanded a little bit, so it wouldn't just help out Fiorella if she needed it, which she will be this semester, but also it could help out Legislative Coordinator Rotina in cases where there's a lot of legislation on the agenda and a lot of meetings he needs to take, and in cases where Damani is busy, they can help out me. So that next week, there will be a resolution coming before Senate, sponsored by members of Senate leadership, with the description of the position, this Chief of Staff to the Office of the Speaker, which will just be, as I said, their job will be to go around and help every member of Senate leadership undertake their tasks as we go through this second semester, as it will be busier for us, and also include the name of the holder of the person we'd like to hold the position, and that is Holly Ann Lau. There were a lot of it was a very difficult choice for us to make, but Holly Ann has gotten the position, so that will be coming for Senate next week for a vote, and hopefully will pass. Next, I have been thinking about this since before I was speaker, actually. Something I very much wanted to do is make a committee that reviews our reviews legislation that concerns our bylaws and our budgets. Because right now, as you may have noticed, we have 4 standing committees, all of which review our joint resolutions, but we have no committees at all that examine our budgets before they come to Senate, any bills, any resolutions. And arguably, those are some of the most important pieces of legislation we will consider and pass in the body. I think that that's something that we should change. Now, I'm not going to be writing legislation quite yet, but what I want to make the announcement here for is for those of you who would be interested in serving on such a committee, if you feel you have knowledge of budgets, if you feel you have knowledge of our governing documents, would like to serve on such a committee, Please send me a short email sometime in the next week or so detailing like why you want the position, why you think you'd be good for it, just so I can get an idea and gauge interest on who would want to be involved in that process. Third, you all got an email today, committee and office hour assignments for you newer senators. We'll talk about this a little more in the presentation and the training, but you're all expected to serve on at least one of our standing committees and go to your assigned office hour. Parliamentary Contreras sent those out today. You're allowed to rank your choices. A lot of you have already done that in terms of committee and give us a couple different times in which you are available for an office hour. We will then assign you those times and you will be expected to attend those unless you reach out to us and give us an excusable reason otherwise. Make sure you complete that or you will be assigned something from a coin flip or whatever other method we choose. We want to make sure you guys are involved in that, but we do have to place a deadline on that. So get that done as soon as possible.
Before we do that, just one more note on that. We try to get those out as fast as possible so that we can get you guys into your office hours and committee assignments like ASAP. So people who have already submitted that, the office hour slots go really first come, first serve. So some of you probably already got your first choices. So try to get those in by Friday at the latest.
Yeah, those are very important. Fourth on the list, Parliamentarian Contreras wanted me to mention Huskython. USG is doing a Huskython. Does have a Huskython team this year. I'm actually going to turn over to Josh a little bit to speak more on this because I know he and Fiorella are working on it.
Yeah.
You can just say a little about it.
So really quick, nothing specific right now. We're actually waiting on some information from the Huskython lords and lads. So basically Huskython's coming up for those of you who aren't part of the team. If you want to join, the minimum donation amount is like $150, so very doable if you still want to join. I think it's like about a month left, but we'll be getting more information out to you very soon, probably later tonight. And if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting for supplementary help, I guess, then you just email me at joshw@upenn.edu. Stay tuned.
So I think that's most of the announcements that we have. I think you have an announcement.
So the USG advisor came by the office today and asked me to relay this to all of you. I'm just going to read what's on the paper here. Actually, I'm not going to read it. If you would like to read it, there are several copies of this in the back. Basically what this is there is a joint election candidate info session next week on the 30th of January here in the Union. If you are interested in running for USG President, Vice President, Comptroller, well, you all already know how to be senators, but if you would like to learn how to do that again, looking to be the board, foundation board representative or undergraduate student trustee, there's an info session for all of those things happening next week in the Union. Just a note on any of those, if you intend on running for any of those positions, you need your petition with all of your signatures turned in by February 8th. So if you're looking to do that, make sure you stay on top of those deadlines. It looks like current office holders will be available to speak to you guys if you're interested. So if you would like this info sheet, it is right there next to the donuts. There are also donuts if you're into that kind of thing.
Are there any other announcements? Would anyone?
Are you gonna let the veteran senators go after this?
Yeah.
Snaps and claps.
All right, guess what? I'm back. Game night, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock in the SOC conference room. We're gonna keep this going for the rest of the semester. So please come, please. I will beg if I need to.
Other announcements?
He said,
Yeah.
Thank you. Real quick, my name is Fabio Sacamano. I'm a senator from Commuter Students. Over break, I wrote two, I guess, bills you would call them. One of them is a joint resolution talking about the implementation of a contraceptive vending machine. I got the idea, Yale University tried to do this. I know it's been implemented at a couple schools in California. So I thought it would be something that we'd be interested in looking at. So just wanted to let you know if you guys would like to sponsor, or if you want me to share the document with you so you could have a look at it and share it with you. And also I wrote a bill that amends the way the comptroller can proposed new funding policies. I felt that they were very rushed last semester, so I want to like implement a certain timeline that they would have to follow in the future. So again, if you're interested in hearing more about this, just contact me, send me an email. Thank you.
There you go. All right. So, do you want?
Is this where we go?
Yeah, these are just announcements, just like we do during the Senate.
You want to try me? I'm much more powerful. So we've had issues in the past with committees kind of like representing their PR-related issues. I'm the PR director, if you don't know me.
What's your name for the people who don't know you?
Well, I didn't. Okay, I guess there are other people here. My name is Omar Tawe. I'm the PR director. I do lots of things. In conjunction with work from Nisali and Damon, they're kind of like working on this initiative with, actually it's their initiative. I'm like just obviously a key player in this initiative. Also, I'm sorry, I just came from practice, so I'm sorry. But that being said, so this semester we're going to try to repair some of like the issues that are seen when committees and other like divisions of USG are trying to have things promoted on social media or within the UConn student body. We're starting to hopefully have, we're going to have legislation in the future proposed that suggests that each committee will, or recommends that each committee institute their own vice chair of outreach or things along that line, and that they will meet with my PR team on a regular basis to kind of communicate with me so that I don't need to go out of my way all the time to get to the committee chairs and find out from them, and that they don't need to be constantly bombarding me with information. So it's kind of like a way to facilitate information flow to me so that I can distribute it to the student body. We're going to start taking steps to like move forward with this kind of initiative, but initially probably has a bit more information than I do with the
Yeah, you can.
legislative aspect.
You can do whatever you
Come on,
want. You can come up. You can stand there.
That doesn't face up here.
Hi everybody, I hope everyone had a great break. So pretty much going off of the elephant words that you said, we're working together to make a working group about PR outreach, essentially because Omar does a lot. He's pretty much a superhuman PR director, essentially. So when he does leave, we do need systems in place that will I guess make up for the fact that Omar won't be here anymore. We need to have effective communication between committee chairs and the PR director that will replace Omar. So we're getting together, making a working group, and I will be passing around a sign-up sheet. We'll be having meetings, I guess.
Every other week will be the PR team meetings. That's like the standing meeting.
And then through the working group, it'll just be over the next few months, we'll be coming up with ideas, through senator input, how we could solve these problems that we're having. I have a sign-up sheet somewhere. I don't know where it is now, but I'll pass it around with a nice purple pen. Please return the purple pen. And yeah, Matt's sign-up sheet is along there too. But thank you.
So just to reiterate that basically there's no structure available for the PR director or committee chairs to utilize when trying to disseminate information. I go out of my way, and the committee chairs this year have gone out of their way to be in communication with me and vice versa. And that's why things have worked this year, but in the future, I don't really, not that I'm not confident that people will be able to live up to the expectations of the previous holders of their position, but it's better to put something in words and in writing so that if anything falls through in the future, we can have somewhere to reference how to do things. So with that, Nisali and I and Damon, probably mostly Nisali and I, will be leading this bi-weekly initiative. Damon brought it to the table.
I will say, Nisali's done a great job, and she'll also be the PR representative for external. But if you're interested in joining this conversation, and we'll have informal meetings, we'll be sharing. Feel free to sign up. You don't have to. You're busy, but if you want to and you're interested in that, it'll be a great way to not only contribute to legislation, but also get into PR in the future.
Yeah, it's just something else to get involved with, and if you have an idea, let me know. If you think that our PR sucks and you want something different to happen, I don't agree. I saw his face. I saw his face. Yeah, if you think that there's changes that we can implement and you have good ideas, improvements, the good word. Yeah, if you have improvements, if you have thoughts, if you have feelings, just let us know. You can shoot me an email, a text, and you can also sign up for the sign-up sheet.
Also, if you're explicitly interested in being heavily involved, email me at publicrelations@usg.uconn.edu. I'll send you information on when we're expecting to have the PR team meeting, but it's flexible to change obviously because not everybody's schedules are the same as last semester. It was Thursdays last semester after, I think it was from 5 to 6, but that's subject to change if people are unavailable and you want to be really, if you want to be interested in, or want to be a part of it. So cool, that was a long announcement, I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. That's exactly what this is for. All right, Matt?
Good job.
Thank you. I have another meeting. Bye. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the first week of classes.
All right, guys, so this is something with a lot of headway, even at the state capitol, but early voting is a big thing that's like really, really beneficial to college students. It's shown all over the country in different areas, but it's something that Connecticut's kind of behind on, so I'm definitely looking into legislation on that. I'm gonna have a drafted external on Friday. You all should come. External's the best. Thank you. But yeah, I'd love to get as many eyes as I could on the draft, and then from there, actually going further in legitimate lobbying, going through with writing letters to congressmen, phone calls, and even meetings to really see this something all the way through where it doesn't just get passed as a resolution at Senate and then die. Like nothing goes from there. So if you want to help on that, I think there's a sign-up sheet going along. Just come to me. I can also read the sheet up, or come to external on Friday.
3 to 4.
3 to 4. And
Is 3 to 4 in the top.
What is it? Like,
early voting? Oh,
you just
okay.
explain
I
it a
should
little
probably explain that. Yeah. It's literally what it sounds like, which is kind of why I'm so like mesmerized how it hasn't been passed already. But you would be able to just go to a polling place or a town hall, like a designated location by the state. Secretary of State's office can do it herself pretty much. But and you would just be able to fill out your ballot a few weeks early. That way kids going to school far away, or even like if you live in Connecticut but don't want to go all the way home and don't want to register up here, just something really easy. You can go fill in your exact ballot early and send it in. That way you can, as many people can vote as possible.
Yeah, and I can make a quick point. Like,
Of course.
in other states that do it, so like with the early voting system, you can vote like a week in advance. So like, I know we have 1 day of voting in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And absentee balloting, but you know, everyone here is busy.
Yeah, and absentee ballots are, you guys have done it. So unless anyone has anything else to add, thank you guys.
Does anyone else have any announcements? Anything you wanna? With that, if you were not elected in the special election, wait, wants to do something.
All right, the parliamentarian is not here tonight, so it falls on me to deliver our snaps and claps. There were a few from before the break, so I'm going to read those first, and then we'll move into the ones that were submitted more recently. So the first comes from Canoe to Josh Crow. He has been really. You didn't say to be anonymous.
No, I just like the guy.
Oh yeah, all right. From Canoe to Josh Crow. It says he's been really supportive and helpful in regards to Senate meetings, as well as with handling certain situations. He wrote that better than I said that. The next one comes from me to Dylan DeMora, Holly Ann Lau, and Matt Zantowitz, and that was for their constructive criticism in the last caucus we had. We had a holiday party, but the one right before then on a piece of legislation. More recently, we have one from Damon to Matt Zantowitz for stepping up to bat at this semester in external. From someone to Fabio for he wrote legislation and is spearheading the Plan B contraceptive vending machine initiative. This is from someone to Fiorella. It says, for being an exemplary vice chair of student services, she will be missed dearly. Oh, yeah, she just can't make a committee time. Yeah, she's great. This one is to all of the graduating seniors for graduating soon. This one is to Avalon, who is not here. She's the committee chair of academic affairs.
I was thinking like the
to Avalon, she's not here because she is a committee chair and she's not required to come to caucus. One for snatching class, R for being so sweet, inclusive, and inviting. It made such an impact on me that I wanted to be more involved because of her.
Yeah. This one's from Anonymous to Damani Jules. Damani is the reason why I even ran for senator, because he was so outwardly passionate and excited about everything, everyone being involved, that it made me genuinely interested and kept me around. His energy and passion is so amazing and refreshing to the entire environment. It's funny things.
This is from someone to Senator Cannon for being officially 1 year older today. Finally, this one's to Anna Pratt for sharing her animal crackers with me during Senate.
All right, if you were not elected in the special election, you can now go. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. We're just going to do a review of all the stuff in Senate, just to train the new senators, but otherwise, you're welcome to leave. All right, everyone, we're going to get this started. You're an older senator and you're still here. You're caught up in the training, so.
I know, I got it.
Yeah, there you go.
I love
I have a habit where I'm gonna see.
Where is that So before we actually get started with the training piece, because we're all new here, I wanted everyone to get a chance to introduce who they are to each other. I didn't tell them I was going to do this, I just kind of decided that that's something I wanted to do. So before we do that, I just want to go around the room. You can say your name, your major, your constituency, and then something else about you. We'll start with you.
So I'm Josh Crow. I'm the West Senator and the Speaker of the Senate.
That's the fun thing about you. All right, I'm Damani. I am the senator from NextGen. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm also the deputy speaker. There are more fun things about me than that.
Literally, give me a fun thing, like something.
We'll come back around. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. They don't apply to me.
Yeah, we just have that.
No!
I'm Josh. I'm the legislative coordinator and commuter senator. And it's interesting about me, I almost got killed by a dog toy one time.
By what?
See, that's a fun thing.
A dog toy.
That is fun.
Did you choke on it or something?
Bingo, yeah.
Ah,
It's a long
yeah.
story, so we'll get into it later, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
All right, I am Caleb. I am the other senator for West. A fun thing about me, I got hit by a garbage truck once. While we're on the topic of
I don't know if I can cut the top of near-death experiences, but I'm Connor. I'm one of the East Senators, and I'm the guy who convinces people to go to game night. 7 p.m. USG Caucus room.
Go ahead.
I'm Dalton Howie, I'm a Northwest Senator, I'm a political science double major, and I was almost hit by a fire truck.
That's the total.
Okay. All right, I'm Fabio Sagmano, commuter senator, and I was once almost hit by a bicycle in Italy. That's why it was a bicycle. Yeah.
I like my life.
I'll say the fun thing about me, I've almost walked into another person before. I've not had these kinds of experiences.
At least it was
I'm Alex. I'm the senator for School of Fine Arts. The only one. Yay. It's kind of a big deal. And fun thing about me. I've hiked a lot of mountains. I've hiked the top point of the Appalachian Trail. So like it technically counts as part of it. Yeah. Fun thing. I do activities. I take my cars.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kareen. I'm Senator for McMahon.
We're sorry you had to come back to this.
I'm Lainey, I'm the senator for North, and I guess a fun fact, I transferred here from GW.
I'm Steph, I'm the BuzzFeed senator, and I just got back from Ghana.
Welcome.
I'm Dylan. I'm a political science Spanish double major, and I'm a Garrigus senator. And this.
I didn't know that.
Okay. My New Year's resolution was I went vegan, and I'm sticking to it. So that's my fun fact.
I'm Alka. I'm a commuter senator. I'm a major. Something fun about me. I'm on the dance team at UConn. Huh?
I'm Josh Resnick. I'm a senator for CLAS. I'm a double major in political science and psychology with a minor in Spanish. And something fun, I recently went to the Dominican Republic.
For Josh in Senate. Well, actually, he's the first one. I like these two less.
Go ahead.
I'm Nick Nemec. I'm a sports management major. I'm the tower senator. The fun fact is I was born in Arkansas.
Nice. Hi, I'm Eden. I am the nursing senator. I'm also a nursing major. And a fun fact about me is I'm the twin brother.
My name is Sean Roach. I'm the ACES senator, so I'm undecided. I don't really have that many fun facts. I did hike Mount Washington though. But that was cool.
My name is Ethan Worsler. I'm an alumni senator, poli-sci major, trying to get calm. I also hiked Mount Washington when I was 8.
I blindfolded back.
Go
Oh, my name's Caitlin Cannon. I'm a senator for the College of Ag. My major is Allied Health Sciences, and it's my birthday today. I have a message. How do any of you know my birthday? You don't know?
Why don't you? I don't know.
You have the thing. Hey,
Yeah.
just your Snapchat thing said it's your birthday.
Oh, you did?
So it was you.
Yeah.
I'm Jared. I'm a political science major. I'm a commuter.
Yes.
And fun fact about me is I've been to over 30 states.
My name is Kurt. I'm a computer science major. I'm a senator for the School of Engineering, and I like to play basketball.
My name is Ire, MCV major, psychology minor, senator for Orange Departments, and my back is probably great for soccer.
Damon, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
I'm Damon Reynolds. I'm a sophomore accounting major, chairman of the External Affairs Committee. We meet Fridays at 3 p.m. This Friday, we are meeting in the Student Activities Office, 308D. I'm also the senator for business, and I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you.
Something interesting.
Error, patient.
Where to start? I like cheese.
There you go.
Favorite food.
All right. Well, with that, I believe that's everyone. All right. Well, in that case, we're going to start off by, before I give the board PowerPoint, we're going to start off by brainstorming ideas of what around amongst you new senators of things, issues you see on campus, things you think student government should address, things you might want to write legislation on. That way we've got a framework, some ideas going forward in the future. We can put you guys together in groups so you can start working. But anyway, this is the part where you participate. Raise your hands. Who has ideas? Go.
One of the things, I don't know if this exists already, I haven't been able to find anything, but like a unified code of, well, that too. A unified code of conduct for staff. So like, I've had multiple teachers now, multiple professors refuse to give out test averages. And like, if we could like recommend to the administration the implementation of like a unified code of ethics or a code of conduct for professors on campus that would include all those little things that like all professors have to give out averages, all professors have to have, you know, office hours listed on their syllabus and not by appointment, like little things like that. I think that'd be good.
Other ideas?
Sorry, this for like syllabus or
For professors in general. Something very comprehensive.
So this in general, like the major problem I came across when I was running was people don't know what USG is or does. So to that end, I thought that maybe utilizing the student emails to send out legislation that's been passed or send out proposals in past asking for feedback would improve the visibility of what we're doing and let students get more involved with giving us direct feedback.
Can I add that? We do like a monthly bulletin to the entire student body.
Really like that idea.
Nobody reads that.
Other ideas? I'm actually gonna put you on the spot, Alex. I know you've got some, you talked to me last semester about something you might wanna do for the school firearms. Why don't you tell us about that? Talk about Photoshop.
Oh, yeah, so, we recently had, well, not recently, we had Photoshop available for UConn students, and now we don't, because Photoshop changed their policies, and UConn was like, we have to pay more money, oh no. But it is still a requirement for most of the art classes and design classes and like anything in School of Fine Arts. So you have to like pay for your own Photoshop, which is a dumb amount of money when it's still required. So getting Photoshop back, whether it's through USG or whether it's through like, actual budgetary.
Other ideas? Go ahead.
A lot of colleges give like a certain amount of pages that students can print out for free. Maybe that.
Oh, because you're a senator, you have free printing in the
Yeah, by the way.
Oh, I'd like that omitted from the record. But that perk of being a senator.
Join USG.
But that not to take away, because that is definitely still something we should pursue.
Is there a limit to that, or?
No.
So technically it's supposed to be for USG related things, just, you know. do that.
Yeah, swing by the office. Other ideas? Go ahead.
I think that come up, well, I came up with it when I spoke to Derek and everybody. I'm still working on it though. So more space for commuters on campus and more activities they can get involved in, and coffee is a big issue. Coffee will be offered on certain days at certain times, and it doesn't reach out to all commuters on campus. And there
I believe it's Wednesdays at like 8 to 9.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else. While we're talking about like amenities in the student government office, there is also like coffee and things that you can use in the Keurig. Technically, it's not reserved for senators, but obviously you guys are in the office more often. You're more likely to use it, so something else.
Parking. I don't know how we would address that, but maybe like a really well-written joint resolution, like, you know, drilled in that parking is a serious problem, especially for commuter students. Like one of the things that I thought is to reduce the amount of passes given to on-campus students. Like I'm recommending that that is reduced because commuter students need the parking more.
I don't know how this would come across, but within like hours, whether it's research or student teaching or independent study, whatever else, it's like 40 hours per credit. So creating a standard of logging your hours and things like that, because I know a lot of us do like different things outside. So whether you're doing like student teaching, maybe they don't count like the hours you put into lesson planning into that. Like, shouldn't that be all accounted for within the credit-based hours? I don't know. Justify the credits.
Oh, hey, this is just brainstorming. This is good. This is a good place to start from. We can always talk more at work and push you guys in the right direction.
Going off of that, maybe like a uniform ratio for research-based credits. I know some professors give them out like 3 hours of research per credit a week, and other professors are like 6. So that's a big disparity.
a big like repeating thing I'm hearing that could like kind of bring a lot of pieces of legislation together is like standardization when it comes to like professors doing things a lot of different ways. Like, yeah, we could absolutely get into talking about that.
I do say this in the sense, sorry, I do say this in the sense of like specifically with shows or designs or other projects that our students are doing on their own time, which will help them in that sense. They're doing for like independent study credits, not with the professor who's like checking off their hours. It's their own thing of an interest, but it's just like ignored and like you put work in all of this and like whatever you do, you put work into it and it's not recognized in that sense.
I think this is, oh, sorry.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
I'm not sure if USG can do anything about this, but it's very annoying when you have to buy a textbook only to get a code, you know, and then you use the code and the textbook isn't really used anymore. I'm not sure if we can do anything about it or it's only about the university.
We can, it may not be able to manage, something we'll talk about in general when we get a little more into the training is like, we can recommend a bunch of different things and we can go into talking with like the president and other members of the executive about the best way to like ask administration for these things. It may not be exactly what we have in mind, but it'll be a step in the right direction, an improvement. Is that our worst thing?
Yeah, this is much less of a policy thing we put forward as passed through Senate. More so like in practice, I feel like there's often a disconnect between the people of our, for example, I'm an alumni, there's 4 different buildings, I don't know everyone in every, it's a lot of area. So, however, the Hall Association is able to send out emails with everything they want. And almost like going through Hall Association or access, kind of working closer with Hall Association to access your constituency, I think should be encouraged to senators. Because if we are trying to represent undergraduates in the body and I can't talk to them, then that's obviously a problem.
Absolutely.
While Hall Association has much easier access just because they're able to send out as many, from my understanding, they're able to send out emails much more frequently.
And even in that sense, just like saying, hey, I have office hours during these hours,
Sure.
like, there's no way to say that to anyone.
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
just shouting it from the roof.
To that end, for those of you who are residential senators, I asked the director of my res hall if he could just send them out, and he said sure. I happen to have a great relationship with my hall director, so that's to my own benefit, but I think other hall directors would probably be receptive to the idea.
But I mean, the problem still stands for academic senators. Like,
Yeah, you're one, yeah.
Well, there are listservs that they can.
Yeah, a problem we've experienced in general is also like, there's a listserv that has access to every student in the entire UConn like population, and like not even the USG president has access to that. Like I personally have some problems with like that sort of thing when like the people's chosen representative cannot reach out to all the people. I see issues with that, and so it's definitely it's definitely a problem that we go ahead.
And that's not even just like communication, even like when there's an election going on. Like that should, like every student should have access to the how we vote. And I know maybe like has that been a thing in the past? Because I don't think it was for the special election or the one I participated in. I could be wrong.
What do you mean by like how we vote?
In terms of someone sending out an email to every undergraduate student for the link to vote.
Oh no, that's no.
So like that to me is kind of crazy.
Absolutely. Again, that ties in a lot with that issue, but that's absolutely, at the very least, something when it comes to elections that we can address. Other ideas? All right. I think this is a pretty good list, and we'll definitely come back to this. I'm going to look at it with Senate leadership, talk to the legislative coordinator, see what we want to do with it. If we want to like bring a couple of you guys together, start talking to each other, like kind of jump-starting those conversations. Maybe even taking up some of the issues ourselves, especially the ones about communication. Like I think as speaker, will start looking into that more and definitely start talking to a lot of you in regards to that. But otherwise, unless anyone else got anything, I think we can.
Just a quick point. A lot of things up there fall pretty neatly under a committee. So if there's no problem with just approaching a committee chair for something academic related, go to Avalon and say, hey, I've noticed this problem. People say that this is a problem. Help me help them. And the committee chairs will definitely facilitate that.
yeah, and if you don't feel comfortable with that, or you don't have the information of a specific committee chair, like always reach out to me or other members of Senate leadership. We're here as resources for you guys. We'll get you in contact with people who need to work. Okay? Sound good? All right. Well, we have a presentation that I'm supposed to give you guys. I will try to truncate it for the sake of all your sanity. But, you know, me and welcome to student government. Go ahead. Keep going. So this just gives you a general overview of what our job is in student government. It's, as you'd imagine, to advocate for the student body, to have those conversations with administrators like we were just talking about doing, and just providing the means for students to have a better experience here on campus. Enjoy their time at UConn better. Okay. Activities. This gives you a general overview of how our structure is. We have our judiciary, which has our justices. They interpret our Constitution and bylaws and oversee our elections. Our executive has president, vice president, and comptroller. The staff, which is our office staff that does bookkeeping for our clubs, and presidential appointees, which includes people like Omar, and also committee chairs. Those committee chairs are approved by votes of Senate. The legislative branch is one you're all involved in. It has Senate in it, and the 4 standing committees fall underneath Senate. All the legislation that gets passed through them comes to us, all their rules come to us as well, and you will all be assigned to one of those 4 committees. Before we go on, I just want to give a quick overview. I think many of you know what the committees do. Student Services deals with student quality of life issues. They do tampon time and did mental health awareness week, I believe it was. Yep. Student Development handles campus culture and climate. They'll do Let Them Eat Cake in the Cultural Center Open House, which is this spring. Academic Affairs deals with academic issues on campus. They did open source textbooks in the past. They're the ones who hand out care packages from the library. Finally, External Affairs handles all state and local issues that affect the university.
If you want to know more about what the speaker just said, I forgot your name for a second. They're all in the email that Fiorella sent out about the committee assignments, so you can see that along with what times they meet.
Yeah, and there'll be time for questions at the end, so if you have anything specific. The executive executes our governing documents, legislation, and positions we take. They manage the day-to-day operations, our staff, and they serve as our primary liaisons to administration, and of course the comptroller oversees financial matters. So when we pass legislations and joint resolutions, we'll be talking to the president, be talking to those committee chairs to be in the meetings with us and get what we want done with administration. Next, the judiciary, as I described, interprets our governing docs, resolves disputes, and then Senate is us. It's the core body. We represent all of our constituencies. We pass legislation for the whole organization. As a representative voice of the student body, we approve all appointments, we control the budget, and we receive reports from all of the executive office. Go ahead. I already described the standing committees. Your role as senators, maintain and establish frequent contact with constituent populations. We talked about this a little bit, talking in residence halls, and it was definitely an issue. We were talking about addressing, making sure that contact is established, making known USG positions available to all students. Of course, we have PR, which will be primarily responsible for that, but if any constituents ask, you're of course responsible for that as well, and be accessible to students in general. So your responsibilities, you must serve at least one of those 4 standing committees we talked about. You must hold at least 1 office hour a week. You're welcome to stay for more. You cannot be absent, unexcused, for more than 2 required Senate meetings per semester. An absence is defined as being 15 minutes late, or Michigan make a motion vote. Any absence must be cleared with the Speaker of the Senate or committee chairperson respectively. Before we go on, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. If you email me and tell me there's a problem, I will almost always give you an excused absence. If you don't email me, you don't let me know what's going on, I can't help you, and that's when we'll start talking about. But just reach out, I'm understanding.
He has never not given an excuse thus far for someone who's written an email. Like, exactly. 2 people are doing the same thing, 1 person wrote an email, 1 did not. 1 person got excused, 1 person didn't. Like the exact same thing, just write an email.
Communication is...
Also, that just says Senates, but caucuses are also mandatory. You miss a Senate or a caucus, generally we take attendance at both. We won't call your names because hopefully we know your faces, but we are tracking caucus as well.
Where are we meeting? When are we meeting? Every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. in the Student Union. Next week we have a Senate. It is business formal attire and it meets in SU, it's 331 actually, not 330, but it's a ballroom upstairs. It's formal attire, dress business formal. If there's problems with that, again, communicate with me, let me know. And then the week after that is a caucus. This is a caucus right here. Like, this is what we do. It's much less formal. You don't have to dress. Just come as you are. And this takes much less time. So, committee members, just show up and contribute, volunteer for tasks in committee. Make sure you complete them by the agreed upon amount of time.
This slide does not really, or this slide is more targeted towards people who are not senators. So your friends who either didn't run for elections, lost elections, or didn't know that they could participate in USG without being a senator, they can drag them with you to committee meetings. They can just show up and contribute.
Operations. The way we run things, like obviously state law comes first, state policy, and then the Constitution, bylaws, our standing rules, and then parliamentary law, which is Robert's rules. This is how we structure our rules, and this is how we follow them. These exist to protect your rights in general, but also specifically in Senate. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. Robert's rules based around points of motions. Most of those are on the back of all your placards there that you all get, created by General Henry Robert in 1876. So the meeting flow, like I always prepare an agenda. I'll send it out on either Sunday or Monday night, telling you guys we have a Senate, it's business formal, and here's the agenda with all the pieces of legislation. We're expected to know the agenda and the pieces of legislation proposed. The agenda is just a collection of the main motions, and we move through these motions in order. There's just a list of a bunch of different motions here. I'm going to put this PowerPoint, I'm going to make this PowerPoint accessible to all of you. I'm not going to read through them all for all your sakes, but it just shows in ways in which we make motions and then vote on it and that those votes are required. If you can hit it again, this is the same thing. This is what I want to go over. These are important. These are points. They don't require motions. You can just simply raise your placard and say one of these 4 points, and they're all interruptible, which means someone else can be talking and you raise your placard. Point of personal privilege is like if the lights are, you can't see the board, or something else going on that's too hot, let us know. We'll fix that.
We get those a lot because we forget to turn off the lights in the room.
Exactly.
So, like, we're looking at our computers so we can see everything fine, but no one else can see what's on the screen, so just feel free to shout those out.
Yeah.
Well, like, wait to be recognized and everything, but yeah.
A point of information is like a question on the matter at hand. You raise a point of information. Where did you get that data in your bill? Point of information. What administrators would we go to if this passed? Things like that. It deals with questions about content. Generally speaking, they shouldn't be longer than 1 to 2 sentences. Last semester, I was pretty lenient on it. I let people talk for a lot and like arguably make points with it. But this semester, I'm going to try to contain it to just asking questions. As a general rule of thumb, if your question is more than a sentence or 2, it's probably something you should be saying in debate. You should wait your turn. If you think the rules of order have been violated, that's a point of order. If I'm ever chairing, and this does happen, and I forget to have a second to a motion, say point of order, Mr. Speaker, that motion was not seconded, I'll recognize that and move on. And if you guys, as new senators, will probably use this one the most, it's a point of parliamentary procedure. If you don't understand something about our rules, if you don't know the method in which to make a motion, this is what the question you would ask, the way you'd ask, how does this work? How do our rules exist, and what do they say?
Normally, when it comes time to vote, sometimes rules require us to vote on whether or not we're voting, and then vote on the actual thing itself. So if you're ever confused on what we're voting on, that's what you would use.
This is very, very important. We struggled with this towards the end of the semester a little bit. Parliamentary behavior. You raise your placard to speak. You raise it, use the paper as demonstration. You raise it like this if you want your name added to the speakers list, so flat with your name across. You raise it like this if you have a motion or a point.
A quick note on that. When you hold up your placards to get on the speakers list, normally that would be me or Fiorella, the parliamentarian, who's keeping track of the speakers list. So, A, we ask that you hold it high and clearly hold it sideways so we know that we're looking for you. And B, we ask that you hold it up till we make eye contact or give you thumbs up or something, just to make sure that we don't skip anyone. We try to get everyone in the order that they raise their placard. So it might be annoying, but we just ask that you hold it up so that we can make sure you get on the list.
Like the back of your placard has all the motions and ways in which you can make that, so if you ever need a refresher, they're on there. Listen to everyone, that's an important one. Debate issues, not character. You shouldn't be slandering other people or accusing them of other things. If you do, I'll move you out of order, be able to continue. Be respectful is the biggest thing, right? We're all here, the betterment of students, and we want to make sure that we communicate that correctly without insulting each other. And the biggest, another thing that ties into this, that's like something we do very formally, is we use titles. So I'm not Josh in Senate, I'm Mr. Speaker, as Deputy Speaker Douglas, Legislative Coordinator Rotina. You say Senator and then their last name when you want to address one of their points. But remember, never address them personally. Who enforces the rules? I do, unless I'm not chairing, in which case Damani does. If you're in a committee, it's the chairperson or the vice chairperson. And that just goes over exactly beforehand.
Normally in committees, we use the titles rules very lax. Very rarely would you refer to, say, Damon as Mr. Chair during a meeting of external. We like to keep committees a little less formal, but still they're governed by Robert's rules. Whereas in Senate, you would refer to Damon as Senator Reynolds or more likely Chairperson Reynolds.
So we're going to go over this. What?
I'm sorry, I got excited.
No, this is the final thing, I promise, and I'll get you guys a little long. 3 different types of legislation you can propose. So go ahead. There's 3 different types: resolutions, joint resolutions, and bills. Resolutions deal with internal matters of Senate. They're non-binding. They're almost very rarely used. They're only used to establish rules or make committees, so they really aren't that big a deal, you guys. The next one is joint resolutions. This is they're non-binding. They deal with positions of student government. This is what the majority of the ideas we brainstormed would fall under. Asking administration to do things. Those are always joint resolutions and positions taken by us. And then bills are binding, reflect policy of student government. These we use almost exclusively for amendments to our bylaws, our constitutions, and of course the passage of our budgets. So again, this is not something that's as important. Joint resolutions are the ones you guys are going to use more often than not. Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Do authors count as sponsors?
They do not. There is actually no rule that says that you cannot both author and sponsor a piece of legislation. It looks better if other people sponsor it as well, but there's nothing that says you cannot.
Yeah, the idea behind that being, if you wrote a piece of legislation and you can't find 2 other people who agree with it, it's going to fail in Senate. So it looks better if you have people who are not yourself as the sponsors.
In addition, it incentivizes talking to other senators and having discussion outside of it. Go ahead.
In the sense of sponsoring joint resolution, is it only senators, or could you get sponsored by like a committee? Could you get sponsored by outside units?
So the way this works is an author can be anyone from the undergraduate student body. Our presidents, vice presidents, chief justices have been authors, right? When it's sponsors, it's just senators. Although, when you pass something through a committee, that committee's name gets added to the sponsors list as well. And the committee's name allows you to skip those requirements about having 2 or 1 sponsors like that. That automatically sends it to us, so that's a real big win if you can get that done. Go ahead.
Could you explain the difference between authors and sponsors?
This is actually an area like I myself have put a great deal of thought into. The difference, I suppose, would be an author is somebody who actually wrote the bill, while a sponsor is somebody who looks at it, maybe makes minor changes to it, but really says, I like the idea of this as it stands. I am willing to like co-sign onto this and say, this is something that should be brought to the Senate. Go ahead.
What's the advantage of like sponsoring something rather than just saying like, I'll vote for it?
Well, first of all, like it allows legislation to be brought to the floor. Second of all, this is a little more vain, but like, your name is on the legislation, so when we print it out and we put it in the book, or and like when it gets sent to administrators, your name is on that. It's generally seen as taking a little more credit, you're a little more involved with the process than simply voting for it, but there's, again, no rule that says you have to sponsor it, anything. It's just something you as a senator have a prerogative to do.
And an additional note, when you sponsor something, generally you are still going to vote for it. So it's just another way of showing your support. Oh, we also normally ask that you add sponsors before Senate. Last year, last semester, we added and removed sponsors during Senate. This semester we're not going to be doing that. So we ask that you take care of that before Senate starts.
Is there some kind of template, guidelines, some resource on writing drug resolutions and everything else within?
There will be.
Okay.
So we've got examples that we've got, and Josh is working on them a little bit too. Primarily, if you have any questions, even if it's just, I have an idea, but I have literally no idea what to do beyond that, he's your go-to guy. Talk to him, like, we'll make sure that his number, I think everyone here has my number and my information. If you don't have his, we can always put you in contact with him. That's literally his job. And like that way we can get all that taken care of. Don't let that be a barrier.
It just occurred to me, we have a folder called Senate Resources that none of you have access to. So the next time we send out an email, which will be probably the one before Senate, along with the Senate for that folder, we'll make sure that folder's in there. There's a PowerPoint that has the contact information for everyone in Senate leadership, along with, I think it has some templates in there, along with some other useful bits of information, including our current bylaws and constitution.
Just a quick point, can we get everybody added to the group meeting, just for expediency?
Oh, yeah, we can take care of that right after.
Yeah, we do have a group meet. It's not used as much as I'd like it to. Last year it was very, we had a pretty good environment, but we're getting there, it's getting better, and just for the sake of communication as well, it's a little easier. So if you're not in that group meeting, if you'd like to be, come up to us afterwards and make sure you're at. Any more questions? All right, I've kept you here long enough. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, guys. Good night.